Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. We're here today with Ungrim Iron Fist, the Slayer King, gonna be taking the dwarfs up against the Lizardmen, which is a fun matchup. I don't often play the dwarfs just because I'm not the biggest fan of their kind of static playstyle. I also think the dwarves are in a little bit in need of a little bit of balancing tweaks. I think they're maybe a little bit stronger than they should be right now. I'm sure some people disagree with that, but we'll kind of talk through some things. We've got Ungrim Iron Fist here for my lord. Of course, he is unbreakable, being the Slayer King, has heavy anti-large armor-piercing weapon strength, solid combat stats all around, although he does have relatively low melee defense, 120 armor, lots of good stuff. The main issue with Ungrim is obviously he's a dwarf lord, so that means he's on foot, but to help supplement that, you can see we've got a massive ranged kind of army here. So you can see the arcs of fire kind of overlapping, and this is the idea with this build, is you've got these overlapping arcs of fire. So anytime, like let's say they come into this zone right here, you can see all these different lines overlapping. There's so many arcs of fire overlapping here. We've got the so what have we got? We've got two cannons, two regular dwarf cannons. We've got a regular grudge thrower, 3 trollhammer torpedoes. We've got 3 rangers and 3 thunderers, and for a front line we've got 5 miners with blasting charges, which also have a missile attack of their own. They only have 1 volley of it, but they can definitely do some damage with that, especially against low armor targets. So yeah, I mean, everything here besides Ungrim has a missile attack, and the idea is that we just overwhelm them with missiles. Because the Lizardmen are a relatively slow faction, they don't have too many fast-moving units, they are going to have a hard time kind of breaking into this Badaka formation. So let's go ahead and take a look at what my opponent's brought. He's got Krokar up on Grimlock, which is honestly probably going to be more of a liability than it is going to be useful. In this particular matchup, I think it's better to take Krokar maybe on the cold one. The Dino does give you a lot of stopping power and pull-through power, but it's also a much bigger target for missiles, which is the main drawback. He's also got a couple of Kroxigors. I mean, the Kroxigors seem good on paper, but again, the Dawi have a lot of armor-piercing missile options, so these guys are going to be relatively, because of their relatively slow speed and, the fact that they're large targets, they will take a lot of damage from that. That being said, obviously, they have heavy weapon strength with a bonus versus infantry of 20, so they're going to be particularly adept at taking out dwarf infantry. So got 2 of them. We've got a front line here of Saurus Warriors with shields. A solid pick, honestly, against the dwarves. They only have 60 armor, but that 52 weapon strength has 18 armor piercing, which is solid for a mid-tier troop. We've also got a Feral Carnosaur. Again, any kind of big dinos are going to be particularly risky against the dwarves, especially feral types, because they are very easy to enrage with ranged weapons for the dwarfs. You'll often find that you're going to lose micro on them before they even get to the battle, and because they're relatively low leadership as well, they very often will rout off. So we'll see how that goes for him, but we've got a front line here of chameleon skinks as well. These guys are going to be really nice at poking away at low armor targets like Slayers and Rangers, which you will probably see some of in this matchup. Slayers in particular will probably be a very common pick here, so it's not that crazy, but these guys are going to have a really hard time with any of the more standard heavily armored dwarf units, so it's a little bit of an odd pick. Probably not the best Lizardmen build for my opponent, but we'll go ahead and talk through some things afterwards. Let's just grab some of the cinematic action as these chameleon skinks approach the fire zones that I've set up here, and we'll see what the ensuing result is. So, a beautiful map. By the way, they did fix, and I'm sure you guys have seen in my recent videos, they fixed the pink and red kind of atmosphere that was overlaid on a lot of the old world maps, and they do look much better now. And let's go ahead and take a look at the combat here. So these chameleon skinks, they do have a decent missile resistance of 40%. However, they're just taking such a high volume of fire, and obviously artillery shots are not, they just do so much damage that they're going to just give unit models in a single shot. So that missile resistance isn't really going to apply there. Although missile resistance does apply to artillery shots, for example, Big Bird, his missile resistance applies to things like warp lightning cannons and so on, so it's a bit of a give and take, but just the fact that infantry unit models have such low HP, per model, means that artillery shots are still going to do a lot of damage to them. So now we're going to open up with the miners when these guys are almost broken, try and finish them off here. You can see these poor little chameleon skinks, who are absolutely adorable, but a huge pain to deal with, so I'm not too sad about seeing them get exploded here. But because my opponent's force is relatively slow, he's had to take a long time to advance up his mainline forces, which means all these guys here are, you know, have pretty much been routed off before the battle starts. Now you can see, though, Krokar has wandered into this kind of arc of fire zone here, and we've got 2 units of Trollhammer torpedoes getting ready to tee off on him, as well as 2 units of Thunderers and this Ranger here, so they are doing a substantial amount of damage so far. Krokar is going to pull back and use that cold-blooded to help heal himself back up. Now the Saurus are going to be joining the fight here. Saurus are obviously going to outclass Miners pretty hard, but, you know, the Miners might be able to kind of poke away at them, and mostly the Miners are just here to kind of block things up and delay as much as possible. You can see now my opponent, he's kind of bringing his monsters forward individually, although this Feral Carnosaur is now here, and just look at the amount of damage that one volley from the Trollhammer torpedoes just takes him down, you know, like half HP, you know, maybe 20-30%, but look at this next volley here. It should probably pretty much shatter him at this point, so likewise, these Kroxgors here suffered the same fate. They were full health just a moment ago here, but the Dwarf Daka lines just opening up shots, firing away with their Trollhammer torpedoes and stuff. You can see the Kroxgors dropping in the distance, having a really rough time, and now Krokar is going to try his luck at coming into this arc of fire here, and you can just see the amazing amount of fire he's taking. He is going to connect here with the 1 unit of Iron Drakes, bouncing a cannonball off his face there, but, oh man, was that friendly fire? Oh, that looks like friendly fire. Somebody's taking the Slayer Oath. But anyway, Ungrim's going to change his target over to these Kroxgors since Krokar has pretty much been dealt with. These Kroxgors are going to go down in a big hurry as well, though, just from all this armor-piercing missile fire. So I guess this battle's a little bit of a PSA. When you're facing up against the Dwarves with the Lizardmen, I mean, I don't know that you'll always face such a heavily ranged-focused build like I brought here. But the fact is that Trollhammer torpedoes are a huge risk to dinosaur-type units, even things like Thunderers. For whatever reason, Thunderers don't seem to suffer from the line-of-sight obstruction bug as badly as handgunners. They do still suffer from it somewhat, but for whatever reason, it's not as bad on these guys as it is on handgunners, the Empire handgunners, which is unfortunate. But, you know, because of their arc of fire being a little bit better, they can shoot up at these big dinos when they're engaged in combat. It may have something to do with the fact that the Dwarf infantry are shorter than the Empire infantry. I'm not really sure. But at this point, the army losses are going to hit the Lizardmen, and it is going to be victory for the Dawi. So, yeah, I don't play Dawi too often, but I figured, you know, I know some of you guys are big fans of them, so I should bring some action once in a while. So I hope you enjoyed that battle. In the breakdown here, Ungrim really didn't get asked to do too much. Most of the heavy lifting here was done by the Thunderers, the Iron Drakes, and these cannons also. The Grudge Thrower did some okay work, but really this kind of grouping right here, plus the 2 cannons, really did most of the work against the big dinos, which was where most of my opponent's hitting power was. You know, he had Krokar, the 2 Kroxagors, Feral Carnosaur, you know, a lot of power invested into those big dinos, and it just really didn't pay off. So let's go ahead and take a look. I do think this is one of the hardest matchups for the Lizardmen, in my opinion, just because the Dwarfs have a lot of answers. Whoops, not that. So let's go ahead and jump into the custom battle here, and we'll take a look at some things with the Lizardmen. So let's go ahead and here. So up against the Dwarfs, there's a few different things you can do. First of all, Lore of Heavens, I think, is going to be a great pick against the Dwarfs. Curse the Midnight Wind in particular, that minus 30 armor is going to help things like Saurus Warriors trade much more efficiently with Dwarf Infantry. I do think Saurus Warriors with shields are a pretty good pick here, so you could probably take 4 of them. Honestly, Skinks, if they can get into the back line and just tie down some range units, they can be pretty useful as well. You do need some kind of armor-piercing anti-infantry. The Feral Cold Ones can be okay, although they have relatively low model count, leadership, and HP, and they're just a little bit flimsy. They're only 450 points, but Cold One Riders can be pretty good as well in this matchup, although, again, low model count, and they do suffer from the Enrage, the predatory senses, so... Or do they? Maybe they don't. That's very interesting. I'd have to have a look at that. But I totally thought they did. Anyway, Revification Crystal's probably still a solid pick. It's going to be a little bit of a magnet for fire, but having that healing is super strong. In terms of the Lord choices, you could take Krokar on a Cold One, or even better, on a Horned One, and he'll be able to dish out quite a bit of armor-piercing damage. He's still got the anti-large bonus, which of course isn't super pertinent here, but he can definitely have that one-on-one power to take down Dwarf Lords, even on this cold one here. Obviously, Ungrim will give him a run for his money with the anti-large armor piercing, but I think this is a pretty good guise to bring him in. You could cheap out and go with the Saurus Old Blood as well. I don't think any of the generic Slans or Mazdamundi himself are going to be great in this matchup. Mazdamundi does have this Sunburst Standard of Hexawaddle, which gives him a bit of extra missile resistance. So if he's not on Grimlock, if he's just on his toilet seat, and you grab that, he actually goes up to 40% missile resistance, which is pretty solid. Actually, I believe that's the base, so with this active effect, it would be up to, what, 52%? So that's pretty good. But again, he's still a pretty big, slow-moving target. He does magic damage. He's not really got the single-target power versus Dawi, heroic units like this. You really need to get him on Slock, but again, that makes him a huge target, so there's a lot of give and take. I still haven't figured out 100% what the greatest build is in this matchup, but I do think it's potentially winnable. The Dwarfs are very strong right now, though, so let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What kind of build would you take as a Lizardman versus the Dawi? And yeah, if you like this kind of content, like and subscribe. I'm keeping it coming with more Total War Warhammer 2 content every single day, so stay tuned for more, and we'll see you next time.